analyst. So the key difference between the IT business analyst and the general business analyst is that the general business analyst primarily is somebody who looks or works in the business context, and what they do is that they're worried more about something like a business process improvements or return on investments or any other stuff related to more of a business context. So that's what a general business analyst is, who primarily is associated more to a finance domain as such, or a normal business context primarily as a subject matter expert or somebody like that. Whereas the IT business analyst, as we explained right here in this definition, is a liaison between the business folks and the information technology folks. So he works in the context of information technology. So any doubts here or any questions here? Because our training is primarily focused on being an IT business analyst, not a general business analyst. So you guys are all clear with that you are in the right course here, and the expectation you have is that you want to learn about being an IT business analyst. Anything? Okay, so I'll take that as that you guys all are aware of it, and proceed further. So primarily, here, who are IT business analysts, right? So we talked a little bit about what an IT business analyst does. So he's a liaisoning person between the business folks and the information technology folks. So primarily a role of a BA in an IT context is that somebody who interacts, or is a person in between who understands the user needs. When we mean the user needs, not just the user. The broader term for that is the stakeholder, right? Who understands the stakeholder needs and goals and captures all of those stakeholder needs and goals as part of requirements and furnishes it to the developers, who are the ones who build the system, right? Or work with the architects to design a system that actually accommodates for the needs of the stakeholder, right? So that is what a liaisoning person does. So any questions here so far? Okay, I'll take that as a no. Just give me a second. Let me clear my throat. Sorry about that. I had some external disturbance here too as well. So just moving on. So a requirements analyst, or being an IT BA, is a major part of what an IT business analyst does. So who's this course really for? That's something that I wanted to really talk about here. It's somebody who can think out of the box, and somebody who's really good at analytical thinking and really problem solving, because they need to understand the big picture. Unlike a project manager has a particular set of role and responsibilities, whereas a BA is somebody who needs to kind of be, technical enough and business savvy in the domain area that they are working, who also understands the business jargon. When we mean the business jargon, the terminology, right, that they use in a business context. Let's say, for example, in a finance domain, right, we're building, let's say, an application for an ATM machine, right? You need to understand what are the terms used from an ATM automated teller machine context, right? From a plain term, what are your customer or stakeholder requirements, and capture that, and then produce it in such a way in a document format that's easily understandable to the developers to build that ATM system, right? Like an application for withdrawal of, or making transactions on an ATM system. So that's what, an IT business analyst does. And here, the perspective on this ITBA role is that it's somebody who starts all the way, when we talk about a software development life cycle, right? So how many of you are familiar? And I want this session to be really interactive, which means I want you guys to be really participating in this. So I'm kind of throwing a bunch of things here, right? Software development lifecycle, or those kind of things, or other methodologies like rational unified process methodologies. And I'm going to throw all of these at you, and I don't want you guys to be kind of overwhelmed. So how many of you understand software development lifecycle? Just Manal or Hussein, can you please explain? Any one of you, or Sam? Okay. So Hussein, I see that you replied yes. So from a software development lifecycle standpoint, right, it's something that starts with all the way from analysis to design, coding, testing, implementation, and support. These are all the phases of a software development lifecycle, and there are different methodologies, right, that a person really, deals with, or an IT business analyst deals with. So that person, as a BA, would really be starting from, he's somebody who will be there from an end-to-end standpoint as an IT business analyst, from requirements gathering to all the way to design, helping do the design document, working with the architects or with the developers, from the user experience folks, and then somebody who also does provide the guidelines or scenarios for the testing. So a business analyst role, depending on what the enterprise is, could be starting from an analysis and all the way go to implementation and support aspect, doing all the user guides and everything. So if you see here, really, that's how we put it. Like, the last part here would be something like with the user guides, as you can see here, and also do some user acceptance testing on behalf of the customers, or sometimes facilitate the user acceptance testing. So they are somebody who is there end to end on this. You can see it here. Training end users, documentation of user guides, everything. So that's what an IT business analyst does. Here, I want to just jump a little bit into something with this. So who is this BA for, right? So the behavioral characteristics of a BA is somebody who's really outspoken, who can really interact, has no hesitations whatsoever to talk to any level of folks within the organization, right? So sometimes you may have to sit down with a senior VP who has this vision of building a system, an HR system that could be for some pre-approval of a certain overhead cost within the organization, right? So you may have to sit down with that person and understand what they have in their mind and document or capture those. And you, as an IT business analyst, would sit down with that person or facilitate that session. If it's one-on-one, it could be more of an interviewing structure. And that's what we are talking about as behavioral characteristics. And we'll go a little bit deep about each of those facilitation techniques in the courses or in the days to go further, right, in the course as we go. And then the business knowledge is also very important. If you are in a financial domain, you need to understand everything, or at least at a high level, the business domain that you are going to be working in. Also, from a healthcare context, you need to understand certain guidelines, right? That makes the whole difference of what the policies or standards or any procedures that are related to healthcare industry are. So that's why a business knowledge is also very essential. Now, somebody who has an MBA background, that's not an issue. I mean, I would say myself, I have an MBA background, and I went to B school some 17 plus or 18 years back. And I started off with a finance domain as an IT business analyst, jumped over to pharmaceutical, understood the FDA regulations, then moved on to manufacturing and commercial services, then also worked in public sector area, worked with some guidelines that are related to Securities Exchange Commission, Investment Advisors Act. So many things. Again, I'm just throwing these things out there not to really scare you guys out, but the reason why I'm throwing these things is somebody who has that business acumen can really pick things up, and you need to do your homework, or need to really work on gaining that business knowledge very quickly if you don't have that domain knowledge. If you have that, that's well and good. Communication skills is a very key, because you're talking to senior folks. Need to be very good in your listening and capture the keywords. And we will talk again more about that in the facilitation techniques. Interaction skills are very key. You need to kind of reiterate the requirement when you capture that at a high level, so that you understand that you're on the same page with a stakeholder, right? Or the subject matter expert who you have been sitting down with to gather those requirements. That's why that's also important. And then a good bit knowledge of software applications, right? Like .NET or Java, any stuff that is related to OOAD or OOPS concepts. OOPS, I'm throwing this new term now here, OOPS, which means object-oriented programming. So this is OOPS. And most of the developers these days, this all started off way back in '95, and when I started my career as a business analyst, right at the adjunct of Y2K in the year 2000, this was relatively new at that point in time, and not many people knew. But nowadays, it's kind of widely accepted standard object-oriented programming. And then the business analysts, as part of this, actually do OOAD. What does this mean is object-oriented analysis. Object-oriented analysis and design. Okay, so, oops. Object-oriented analysis and design. So this is that. So a business analyst has to have really good understanding of this aspect. Now, this part is not your problem, but you need to understand, in order to really give some document that's really understandable by a developer, you also have to have a very good conceptual knowledge of how this OOPS programming works. So again, this is not rocket science, not highly technical. It's something that's very easy to understand. As we go about this in the future days, you'll really understand this and you will nail it down. Trust me, it's not rocket science. It's very easy. We'll talk about that as we go along. So that's one. And then primarily, those are the essential skills. And I really want, at this point in time, I want to take a pause, and I want you guys to really explain so far based on what I explained, what you need for this skill, right, or a trade that you want to learn. Why do you think you will be a good fit? I want that one-word answer. I want really, or one-sentence answer. I really want you guys to think about this and explain me, so that this becomes more of an interactive session. And the key thing is, for you as BAs, you need to be interactive. I really want you guys to speak up and interact, because we'll be doing role plays as we go, and this is not going to be a boring session just like I deliver a lecture and you guys keep listening and then just fall asleep in the middle, and then maybe not really follow through. I want it to be more interactive. So as I said, we'll be doing role plays. So just the first part to this is to really come and speak up. So tell us that, tell me why, so far based on what you heard, why you think you'll be a good fit for this role, based on what you heard, or what your background is as to why you think you'll be a good fit for this. No? Can I ask you?
I can tell. I think I think I can communicate well. I can talk to the stakeholders and put it down on the document and to translate that into what here I translate into the document, and from the document it will go into the development side, and I can act as a liaison between the stakeholder and the development team.
Good. So, and your previous work experience, based on what I heard from you, also is going to add or provide a value add very much to this particular role. I agree. Yeah. Good. So, Hussein, can you please explain as to why you think you'll be a good fit for this role? And is this something that interests you?
You're talking to me, Sri?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Why not? Why not? Because it's very good. Only thing I don't know the diagram, how to put the diagrams, the Visio and the UML basics, I don't know. But I have a feeling that I can do a better job.
Nobody is going to test you on your diagramming skills, and I'll tell you why. It's a tool. All you need is, as long as you can understand those stick figures, you'll be able to do very good as a BA. So trust me.
Okay.
So you don't need to be an artist for being a BA.
Okay.
Yeah. So since you have a QA background, I think you'll also be a very good fit for this.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. And Samyu?
Well, if that question is for me, then I think I've got good domain skills in my in healthcare domain. So I also think that, I know it from the scratch, so I think I can communicate well with the stakeholders or with even the developers. So I can be an intermediate between the two people or two different teams. And as far as I know, I can interact well. So, and I lack little skills on the software side, but I think I can just you can learn, you learn everything. It's not rocket science, so I take time to learn it. So I think I might fit for this role. So
yeah, absolutely. So overall, trust me, the reason although I asked this question is to tell or not to hear the obvious. The reason why I asked this question is that what I want to tell you is that even you don't have any background, it's completely a novice field for you. Don't worry about it, because you don't need to have a background for this. The reason is, I know you guys kind of gave a justification as to why you think you'll be a good fit for this. Scratch that out. Sorry, no offense, but I could tell you that even if you have zero knowledge about what exactly is this field all about, you can start from scratch and then still be a better IT business analyst, and eventually you can also be making a progression into being a solutions architect. And I'm sure most of the working professionals heard about what a solution architect means, right? So that's a big task of doing enterprise architecture. When we mean enterprise architecture in an IT perspective, that's kind of designing a blueprint for the software or the systems that are going to be built at an enterprise level, right? So that it could be consumed by the enterprise and its stakeholders and the consumers and the customers, right? So that's big bucks. So that would be a career progression that some people could make after being an IT business analyst. Then you be a lead business analyst. We'll talk about that role as well in a little bit. And then from being a lead business analyst, going into solutions architect position. So now, going back to my experience a little bit on this, I worked as an IT BA early on in my career around at the advent of about Y2K time, right? And then I also worked as a lead BA until 2006, 7 time for State Street Bank and Trust at Boston. So then, and I kind of moved my path into a project management, program management field, but not into solutions architect, although I was heading that path. Somehow, so there was not a right opportunity for me. But having said that, that's an awesome field that I would really recommend anybody to go or take further down the path as you really start your career as an IT business analyst. So with that, I'll stop right there and then just move on to the next topic here. So we talked a little bit about key tasks performed by IT business analysts, right? So in the analysis phase, so in a software development lifecycle, right, there are different models or different methodologies, like starting from waterfall or agile methodology to rational unified process methodology to agile methodology. We'll talk a little bit about that first before we jump into the key tasks performed by the IT business analyst. So here, the software development lifecycle, especially particularly pertaining to waterfall or agile method or to RUP, is that in a waterfall model, in a traditional model, it's all called kind of phase gates. In other words, which means you cannot move to the next phase of your software development lifecycle until and unless you finish one state. So it kind of is like this. I kind of want to show you this here. Text. Boxes. Okay. So that's one. What am I drawing here? Are these some stairs or something? Right? So what these are analysis, your phases. Right? Design. Coding, so on and so forth, testing, implementation, and support, right? So until analysis is done, you can't go to the design. And can any one of you tell me what is the biggest drawback for this waterfall method or sequential or linear programming method or, linear analysis model or methodology, whatever you may call? So
yeah, we can't do changes till we complete the cycle.
You cannot what, sorry?
We can't do any changes. If any changes in the requirement, we can't do at the, at different levels. We have to wait for the complete cycle. Only then we can go back and do the change.
Correct.
It's a lot of waste of time.
Absolutely. That's the waste of time is the right keyword or a buzzword that I was looking for. So here you may spend 2 months, honestly, doing this, right? Or maybe 3 months. You gather all your requirements, sitting down with your subject matter expert and blah, blah, blah. You captured all the business rules for this, all your functional requirements. We'll talk, I dropped the word functional here. We'll talk about that in a bit. And then we'll go forward. and then you also captured non-functional requirements, right? By talking to your design folks, getting the design constraints and all of that. And also, let's say you also captured supplementary specifications, which means it could be functionality, usability, reliability, supportability, those kind of illities, is what they often call that. You capture all of that only to understand in the design phase or in the coding primarily, that developer says, hey, this is a constraint we have from a development standpoint that your design or your requirements will not fit because the oops concepts wouldn't allow us to do this, right? It may be a possibility. A lot of people think or imagine that developers can do magic and can create any piece of system, right, to work. But that's not often the case. There will be certain constraints too, and you have to understand those early on. And that's the biggest drawback, right? So you have to go back to your drawing board all over again and do it, and that's a waste of time. So that's why that's the big setback for a traditional waterfall model. And when we are talking about all of this, what happens is in a bigger context, that's why there were different methodologies that came up and became very, very famous. And one of such methodology is a rational unified process methodology. That is a proprietary product to IBM stuff. All of this is inspired by, again, OOAD, which is a standard for the object, which is standard for the UML. UML understands OOAD or OOPS concepts very much. That's why it's called Unified Modeling Language. And we'll talk further more about this as we go. So that's the key difference, is that it's iterative. When we mean iterative, that means that it's repeatable. It happens, the work happens small pieces of chunks, wherein as the requirements or analysis or requirement gathering is happening, the design for the piece of requirements that you've gathered or are gathering are being done iteratively or in parallel or simultaneously as this is happening. And a piece of coding may have already been done as part of prototyping. And then you go back and validate those with the subject matter experts or the users, or in this case, a business analyst who is the subject matter expert. So that's why this RUP became very famous, and a business analyst primarily plays a bigger role in this. And when somebody asks, how do you plan your requirements? You specify all that in your requirements management plan, which is what is the piece right here that we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about, just like you have a project management plan, this is a key piece which not many organizations do, but you as a business analyst, if you maintain that, even though it's not a requirement or not necessarily from a practical standpoint for an enterprise, it's always recommendable and suggestible that we maintain this so that everything is going to be very smooth for you in terms of capturing or how you plan your requirements and how you detail those requirements, how you would get the sign-offs, at what point you would call it as all done and get the sign-off before you go ahead and get that piece of requirement coded by your developers. So that's what this would be, and that's why RUP is a very iterative process. Similarly with Agile, it's also iterative, but we will talk about that in the next phases of our discussions. I'll just stop it at that. Ask you questions here so far. Anything that you guys have or not understood very clearly? So I'll take that as a no. Just move forward. So back in here from our curriculum standpoint, so we're talking about this key task performed by IT business analysts. In the analysis phase, you would be a systems analyst, which means you are the one who is facilitating the requirements, and then you are also the one who is you know, a requirement specifier, which means who would document the requirements, and then you're also you know, that liaison person stating these requirements, or the functional requirements or the non-functional requirements, to your developers. Now, functional and non-functional, we talked about this as words before, but what do they really mean? Functional requirements. Any guesses here? Functional requirements. I'm sure you guys might have heard.
Functional requirement, the important part of the application, like active, like what you call that. Day to day, we use the tabs, we use the tables and the application, all these things. Non-functional are something like GUI, fonts, colors, and decoration, and all these things, design, other things. Non-functional. Functional, something. It means business. It means business. The flow.
Yep. Good. Close. So the functional requirements are something that are business processes, right? So they actually are something tangible, chunks or pieces of work that your stakeholders need your systems to do. What is the system supposed to do, right? That's what you would capture as in your what part. Now, how part is different. So how part is something that your non-functional requirements will specify. In other words, let's say, for example, back to this, building an assembly line for a car manufacturing company, right? That would be a system or an application that you're trying to build, right? A completely computer-aided programming model or designs application that you wanted to build for a car manufacturing company. Now, your functional requirements are, how would you make sure that this application starts or begins with the CAD designers, right? What are the pieces that this particular software needs to have and needs to do as giving an end result, tangible product or a service to your CAD designers? And how would hand off between CAD designers to the next level guys who actually put the prototypes or the design concepts for this application be taking off from the previous guys, right, that you've been dealing with. So that's what we are talking about in a functional requirement. So whereas in your non-functional requirements, what happens is those are primarily something that are more of the utilities that we have been talking about, right? When we mean utilities, those are like your reliability, those are your usability, supportability, those kind of things is what we are talking about. That's the key difference between the functional and non-functional requirements. Now, non-functional talk about what is this system, or how the actual requirements that are part of functional will be addressed, right? So I sit down many times when I sat down with a lot of people, like the subject matter experts to the senior folks in my career, they ask me, okay, I need the system to have, to look like this and do this, look like this, which means I need this. Going back to the same example, right? The CAD. I want this system to really give me a computer-aided design for building this car assembly line in such a way that I need, the windows to be like this. I need the software to have so many colors, those kind of things. I would say, I would stop people right then and there and say, sir, let's talk about what part now. Means, what do you want this system or an application to do? How this is going to be built? And they would say even the solution aspect, right? They would say, I want this system to really have this particular features or things to address this CAD assembly line, computer-aided design assembly line. And I would say, don't worry about the how part, the solutioning aspect, right? I want this system to do this or address this solution. Tell us what you need the system to do is what we'll capture it. We'll come to the non-functional part a little later on in the game. That would be something that you as an IT business analyst would do in sessions called as JAD sessions, right? So that needs to be not a one-on-one stuff with the subject matter expert. You need to have a bunch of technical folks for that. And that is what the non-functional requirements are captured primarily as part of the design when you do something called as a joint application development session or brainstorming or whatever you call. And those are the ones, again, we'll talk a little bit detailedly as we go further in our topics. So good answer, Hussein. Thank you. That helps makes things more interactive here. So the basics of UML here. Moving on to the next topic. Any questions before we do? Okay, I'll take that as a no. Just give me a brief pause here. I need to caution my daughter here. She's being loud with her TV. Just give me a second, guys. I apologize. Okay, I'm back, sorry. So moving on to this, the UML basics. So as I said, the unified modeling language, I worked on 1.0, the first version really. I worked on the 2.0, and since 2.0, I took kind of a pause or a break, and I've been doing different roles. So the current version of the UML unified modeling language is 2.5, I believe, or 2.x is how they're referring it these days. So that's what it is. And as I said, it's a standard for the object-oriented concepts and the object-oriented programming. So that's what, it's the language that OOAD would understand, or OOPS would understand. That's what this UML means, really. And how is it used? It is used in modeling, doing your design documents using some tools called rational rows or IBM rows now. Also, there are requirements gathering tools called as Requisite Pro. I used to do the implementation of it end to end. And in its early infancy days, people spent huge amounts of dollars, millions of dollars in buying those tools. Nowadays, the enterprises have gotten a little smart or cost conscious maybe. They're not doing all Requisite Pro, or maybe the rows at some places. They're still doing it in the financial industry, but not Requisite Pro as much. There are all other tools these days which are very cheap, but still do the same work, like something called as Enterprise Architect. That's built by Spark Systems. Now we will not really per se go into those tools as much unless you guys want me to. At a certain level, we can talk about it. But the essence here is that there are different tools in order to meet this UML. But more than the tool, the concept is what is very important. And its applicability is that we'll talk a little bit about these two things. Applicability is, as I said, when you give a document, when you write a functional specifications document and a non-functional specifications document, which would be more of your, from a UML terms, would be something like your activity diagrams or your use case specifications, right? Again, I'm dropping the new names which you may not have heard or may have heard. We'll talk detailedly about this in the next topic, right in this class, at least today, before we say it's done. So that's what the UML applicability is that the developers would easily understand based on the document you produce. For them, they would know exactly or precisely how to code, what to code, and what that piece of code needs to do, right? So which means the how part, the solutioning aspect part, is also dealt with within those UML notations or UML concepts, and that's where it makes a whole new difference, using this and applying it. Now, the different things in this is that these are the two models that the UML understands. So I want to just give a little bit here. The dynamic behavioral model. So what this means is that what is the system supposed to do, right? So it's more of the reason why we call this dynamic is that it's inherent in the name. So it talks about the behavior of a system as what is this system supposed to do. Like, say, for example, an ATM machine, right? What is it supposed to do? I'm expecting answers here. When you go to an ATM machine, what do you want it to do, sir or ma'am?
Accept your debit card, enter in a PIN, withdraw
withdraw your money.
Do transactions.
So the key aspect here is withdraw your money, right? It's an automated teller machine. So a person physically sitting in a bank is called as teller, right? So when you go to the teller, he asks you, what do you like to do? Do you like to deposit the money or withdraw the money, right, from your account? And the expectation here is that you need to have an account, right? Without having an account, you would go and ask, nobody would give you anything, right? Rather, they may call cops, right? So this guy is trying to steal some money. So the basic condition in a use case here to withdraw money in a physical setup is that you need to have an account. That's the basic condition or the preconditions that you need to meet within a particular use case. So we'll talk about what use cases are. Use case is a chunk or piece of functionality that a particular system is supposed to do. That's what a use case is. Now, in this, the behavior is that what is this system supposed to do? An ATM, an automated teller machine, supposed to do? It is supposed to accept the debit or credit card that you give, and in order ask you certain process flows or certain things to go through, right? Certain steps that you have to go through, and we'll talk about that as well, little detail. Ultimately, it has to give you the money. That's the behavioral model, which means it's doing something, right? That's what the system is supposed to do. So in a structural model, opposite to it, contrary to it, what it does is, this is what is, how it would talk about what is the current system, what does this system do, what is this system all about is what a structural model would talk. An ATM machine, right? You have an application that runs behind. So you're capturing more of an as-is. In other words, what is this doing behind the scenes as-is? Whereas the behavioral model is a to-be. In other words, what do you intend the system to do? You're talking about in a future presence, right? In a future perspective for the behavioral model. And whereas in a static or a structural model, what you're talking about is the as-is current scenario. What does it take to build this ATM system, or the application? That's what you're talking, and that's what you're capturing in your structural model. So any questions here between the dynamic model and the static or structural model? I know it's kind of a little dry here because there's nothing to really show you. But in the next topic right here, this topic we'll make it more, we'll use the paint here and then talk about a little bit about these 3 or 4 different topics further. Any questions between behavioral model and the structural model? Okay, I'll take it as a no. We'll just go forward. So why requirements gathering is really a big deal? Any guesses here? Hussein or Mrinal?
I think requirement gathering is a very big deal because first of all, we need to get the right information and understand, articulate, and then we pass on the information in terms of document to the development team. That becomes a challenge. What you understand, what you get, what you understand, what you put on the document, and how do you pass on to the development team.
Yeah. So, good one. I like that. How do you properly out? So the key thing is that you get what you feed, right? So in other words, you develop, for lack of better word, sorry, I would say, shitty requirements. That's what you get back, and something that ultimately does not satisfy stakeholder needs or goals, and they will not sign off on it. And guess what? Your project is a big failure, right? So requirements gathering, according to a lot of surveys out there in the IT industry done by Gartners or IDCs or these big guys, right? Industry analysts say that 60% of the project is nothing but the requirements gathering. I know, like, people say it's only like 30%, of the time. The project managers, right? Let me put on my project manager hat or program manager hat. They say, hey, you know what? You should not spend more than 20% or 30% of your time gathering requirements. Yeah, well, you may spend that much, but it's 60% of the project. Can you imagine that? You get it right, you are happy through your project. If you don't get it right, you go back to your drawing board. That's what impacts your project schedules, everything, scope, everything, right? So something that project managers or program managers would not like to hear. So you as a BA has a critical role in order to make sure that your requirements are really gathered in a right perspective according to the stakeholder needs and goals. So we'll talk a little bit about this here, which I want to show you guys. I don't know where is the eraser here, text now. Okay. Yeah, sure. The key thing here, why requirements gathering is a big deal, I just want to show you through a graphical notation here. Okay. Control-C, Control-V. Okay, whatever. I'll use another one. Okay. So this would be A. I would call this B. I would call this C. Okay. These are the 3 things that we are trying to really satisfy here, for this particular stuff, why requirements gathering is a big deal and requirements definition. So the key thing with requirements is that requirements is a means to an end, which means it is the only means to an end of a project or a program. And what is a project? Project is something that has a specific start and an end date, right? So which means it's short-lived, unlike operations. So we'll not go into those kind of details because we will be deviating from our topic of BA to ITSM, which is completely a different thing altogether. So for this perspective, all you need to know is requirements is a means to an end, which means you need to really do good due diligence and do a perfect or a good job in doing that. And reason why, you will understand right here. So here, which I want to show is that, so this would be, I'm going to use the word STRQ, stakeholder needs. This would be stakeholder needs and goals. So this would be stakeholder need, right? So this would be system built. And this would be something called stated requirements. So can anybody tell me, this would be something like X, Y, Z. So this would be certain things. Just these are different things that we, for our discussion purposes, wanted to capture. Now, what is a stakeholder need or a goal? Can anybody tell me what could that mean? Stakeholder need and goal. Yeah, good answer. Enhancement. It could be enhancement, or it could be totally a new feature, right? Or a new system that you want to build from scratch, or something that you wanted to build that your system needs to interface with other systems, right? Okay. So any other answers here that we could take? So stakeholders have a business needs and goals that they want the business to achieve, and you're actually capturing all those business needs and goals and calling that as stated requirements, and you're going back and doing a walkthrough or whatever review sessions or whatever you call it, right? You're gathering those as part of your brainstorming sessions, facilitation techniques, or using facilitation techniques, or whatever you call it, as your requirements gathering workshops. In that, you're sitting down, or your JAD sessions, you're sitting down and understanding what they want the particular system to do. And you are stating that in your requirements in the second circle here. And ultimately, the developers are building the system build, right? And now, I want you guys to tell that the systems are built to meet certain stakeholder needs or goals. And these define whatever is the system supposed to do, right? So can you tell me here, where is the most action happening in this particular Venn diagram? Where is the exact action happening? Anybody? It's not hard. I think you guys can tell where most happening action is taking place in this diagram.
A.
Good answer. And Samyukta, you're saying C. Okay, so Mrinal, you said A. So can I ask why you think it's A, Mrinal?
It's where it's the X, Y, and Z interconnect. I mean, A is where everything connects, so it all comes together.
Good job. So, Samyukta, let me ask you your perspective. You said A and C. Why do you think?
Well, yes, because
It's understandable.
gathering the information is the first step, as you said. So it's, I mean, we gather the information from the stakeholder. That's one important step. So that's A falls into it. So, and one more thing is developing the system, or just putting the information or gathered information into, practice is also a bigger step. So I think it's A and C together. So that's what I thought. So.
Okay. So let me actually break it down. So I'm not going to say yes or no right now, but I will explain this and I will let you answer back this question in a few minutes. Okay?
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
So here, stakeholder need and goals, right? So that's part of all your Venn diagram called X. And whatever are the stakeholder needs and goals, in the overlapping part here, which is A, that's where the most action is happening. So the stakeholders actually describe what they want a particular system to do for them, right? As part of their requirements, workshops or gathering sessions that you have captured. Now you stated those requirements and you're actually doing review sessions, as I said, with them, and then gaining their buy-in, right, early on into the requirements gathering workshops and seeking their sign-off. When you're seeking their sign-off, you're saying that they are agreeing with you that whatever stakeholder needs and goals that they stated in the requirements gathering workshops, you have captured it to the core, and they are in agreement with what you have captured that this system is supposed to do, right? Are you guys following me so far?
Yes. Yes.
So that's what happens within A, right? So now, so let me explain about the A part first, and then we'll go to the other parts. Now that's been stated, and then the developers, when these requirements have been signed off, those stated requirements are being built, right? System built. That's actually what is being built by the developers within A. So stakeholders asked for even also B and D, right? But is the developer giving them the B? Can anybody answer me? Stakeholder also gave a requirement of B. Is somebody giving them what they want in B, or what they want as sort of B?
Maybe not from the development team, so.
Yeah, so the requirement has not been met.
Yes.
But the system has been built. So if A to Z are asked, we are giving them only ABCs, or maybe A, B, C, D, E, F. The rest of all the things are missed, right? That's what happens in requirements gathering. So now they also asked for B. We stated that. So our job, we did our job, right? As business analysts. Now, the developers haven't built it. Whose fault is it? Would a stakeholder or your subject matter expert accept this? Now I heard you saying BA. Yeah, it is. It's sort of BA, because BA, as we said early on, requirements are means to an end. And without your requirement without the stakeholder requirement of B being met, how can you call it's an end to a particular stated requirement? You cannot, right? So somehow you had to tuck it in to ensure that even B also falls under A, or in that part, in that aspect, right? So you have to work with your developers and ensure that your requirements are all accommodated. And that's what would be traceability, which we will talk in the next sessions or further classes. Okay. So now Samyukta, let's go back to switch gears a little bit here and then talk about So you said,
Okay.
do you say that we will build something that has never been asked for, right?
Yes, yes.
Is that the correct interpretation?
I don't think so. It's not.
What do you mean? I didn't understand.
I mean, your voice is cutting, so I could hear half. I'm saying that we are not up to the mark because I think C should not be included. It's the A that's apt for the question.
Correct. So you changed your answer now.
Yeah.
Okay, good. You're following it. So a stakeholder never asked for, right?
Yes.
It was never asked for, but we
Yes.
stated it, bold plated. In PMI world, Project Management Institute terminology, gold plating is something that you would give than what additional and what has been asked for, right?
Yes.
So that means you're adding additional scope creep. And I'm sure you guys have heard about this term called scope creep, and project managers would love to talk about it all the time. So in other words, if you have stated something that has not been asked for, again, BA shouldn't have done that as part of stating those requirements. And then that was actually built by the developer, wasting their resources, time, and energy. So Hussein, what's your question? Why? Hussein, I heard you saying why. Oh, okay. You're saying yes. That's right, right? So you agree with me. Okay. Okay, cool. So that's what it is. But now I'm going to also talk about a little bit. I put D later on. Stakeholder asked for it. Those are the requirements that came in after you took the sign off. Did you guys observe when I put D? I don't know how many of you guys followed it. Anybody followed it? I actually said the word sign off, and after that I added D. That happens in real world, guys, folks. Reality from a practical standpoint, you seek sign off, you think all your requirements are good to go as part of your first iteration. Then stakeholder comes by, and tells, hey guys, guess what? We found out something new. We want this really important feature to be added or processes to be added. And that's reality. Guess what? Can you say no? Hey, you're a stakeholder, you provided the sign off. You cannot really add it now. Can that be an answer? No, next iteration, good answer. But you as a business analyst, what's your job here?
Be an effective business partner. So you'll tell the stakeholder it's going to take some time, but I mean, that will be incorporated. So, I mean, if you have like I say, if this iteration is coming to an end, then I mean, you cannot merge it in, like I said, this immediate deliverable that you have. But like I say, you will look to add it to, the upcoming iteration.
Okay, that's one way. What's the other way? Anybody can think out of the box? What else can you do as a responsible VA?
One other thing that comes to mind. Yeah, one other thing that comes to mind is if you can, I don't know if this is again allowed, but extend your due date.
Awesome, good answer. That's what I was expecting. You have two choices here. One is one which you kind of mentioned. I want to elaborate on both the aspects a little bit from a practicality standpoint or real world scenario standpoint. One is say, okay, guys, we have closed down the requirements. Do you understand the impact of adding this requirement to the timeline? Right? That's the question, the first question you need to ask. And if they say, yes, we do, but this is a key requirement we can't miss out, right? The next question is, do you want it as part of the first iteration? If the answer is yes again, okay, then the timelines, that's where you involve your project manager, right? You would go and talk to your project manager. Hey guys, I mean, we took the sign off. This is the date when they signed off on it, you know, but they're adding a new feature or a new requirement now. So, you know, you are the one who manages the timeline. So they're saying that they're okay with the timelines. They're ready to extend the timeline. You know, I kind of also asked, you know, and then the project manager at this point in time could call for a meeting or just go with your word if you're a senior BA or a lead BA, and then just say, okay, all right, folks, you know, let me talk to the stakeholders in a review meeting or in a status meeting and see if it's acceptable. And then they go back and change the timeline. B, you know, or say, okay, we can't change the timeline because I am answerable to the steering committee. Not you are not, right? That could be something, a battle that has to be fought between a project manager or a program manager and the stakeholders, right? So whoever wins, wins, right? So the key aspect is he may come back and say, your sponsor, executive sponsor is not mine. I understand you want this requirement. Now you go talk to your executive sponsor, right? So this happens a lot in the real world, guys. So that's when, you know, you would explain all of this and then, you know, add it to the next iteration. If everybody's okay, everybody's on board. If not, you know, you would negotiate the timeline and set a new timeline, set in stone. Now, that is what is the D we are talking about. It's a new request, or if I would have put it from the beginning, then it was asked for, but it was not stated in the requirements, but was built. Now, let's go back to our definition of what a requirement is. Requirement is a means to an end. Ultimately, you know, a stakeholder need has been met or been built in the system, right? From a system standpoint, although it was stated. Now, is that acceptable? Guys, you as a BA never captured the condition. Guys, I'm waiting for the answer. Can you hear me? Ladies and gentlemen. Okay, it's cutting in and out. Did you get my question? Okay, so it wasn't clear. So let me repeat my question. Okay, my question was, if the D part, you know, was there from the beginning, right? Which means the stakeholder did ask for that feature called as D, right? But you as a business analyst has never stated that requirement in your document, in your functional specifications document, but somehow you could explain it to the developer, and the developer captured it and built it to the built it within the system. Is that acceptable? Is my question. What my question was, folks?
This is Murnal. I would say yes, because again, even though it was not documented, but as part of the deliverable, the developers went ahead and did it.
Yes, that's a good answer now. Yes. So it doesn't matter whether you captured it or not. requirements, as we said, by definition, is just a means to an end. The end state has been reached, right? The D feature that the stakeholder asked for has been met. So, but is that, so in other words, your job has been done. It's been accomplished because somehow orally you conveyed that to the developer, and the developer made sure that it has been accounted for while the system was being built, right, in his code. Now, the question is that a good practice? I'm expecting an answer. No. And not good answer. Yeah, it's not a good practice. So we have to keep in mind all of these things as a good BA, and whose job is it to make sure all these three components are really adhered to and built in from multiple requirements, multiple projects that they are handling, right? Or, multiple projects, or maybe a program, a large program, or a portfolio of projects and programs, right? Whose job would that be? Any guesses? You got just a minute. So nobody answered it? No guesses? I'm going to give out an answer. Well, close, Mrinal, not quite. So remember, I told you there are 2 or 3 different roles depending on the size of the project. Have you ever heard about lead BA in your project or program? I had that role once. So it's actually lead BA's responsibility to make sure that each one of the requirements is accounted for, documented, and conveyed back to the developers. So that's why in your review meetings, peer review meetings, so a lead BA is the one who has to review what a requirement specifier does. Requirement specifier works within the scope of Z, right, which is stated requirements. Those are the guys that sit down with the stakeholders to elicit requirements with various techniques available in the world, like something called interviewing, or decision trees, affinity diagrams. Several techniques are there. We'll talk about those. Brainstorming, we'll talk each one of those about each one of those in next sessions. So that's what is done by the lead BA, and not many projects may have that lead BA role. In that case, it would be the senior BA. And now, yes, as you said, it would be in the case where a lead BA is not there, it would be the BA's responsibilities. Okay, so that's this topic, and that's why it's very important that we work in this realm. So we got really 2 minutes, but since we started 10 minutes late, I would go for another 15 minutes before we wrap up this session for today. And I would like to talk about the remaining things here, and then also give you an overview as to what you will be getting in this course. Requirements definition, we talked about it. Requirements management plan, I would like to show you this template that we have. So this is all my repository of all the stuff that I've collected from past 15 plus or 16 plus years. So I would like to show you all of this as well. Sorry, it's just spinning and taking time. Okay, there we go. No, it didn't. I'd like to, okay. So these are the templates that I have gathered over the time. So we were talking about this, right? Let me go back in here. Requirements management plan. I want to show you this template here a little bit. So this is the template for requirements management plan. Since I was a champion of RUP, Rational Unified Process, just like your waterfall model, RUP has something called as these 3 phases or 4 phases. Inception, elaboration, construction, transition. And each of these 4 phases could be attributed to your waterfall. Inception is like analysis. Equivalent, right? I'm going to use just this. Elaboration would be design. This is the one in your waterfall traditional methodology equivalent, right? So inception is equivalent to analysis, elaboration, construction is coding. Transition to testing, implementation, and support. So equivalence. So this is, this is in the first half here. Inception, elaboration, construction, transition is your rational unified process methodology. And then UML is, this is your traditional waterfall model. So in your requirements management plan, you will have all of these. I'll just go through the table of contents only. What is the purpose of a requirements management plan? You would elaborate that. You would also capture, any acronyms or abbreviations, those kind of things, an overview of what an RMP is. You would actually do organizational responsibilities and interfaces, tools, environment, and infrastructure. Now, how would you identify your stakeholders, right? So that's something that we would also talk about in this course, like in terms of the RACI matrix here. I know we talked about it a little bit, or we will talk about it in elaborately in this phase here of what templates are available, what is RACI all about. So there is a technique on how to identify who are your key stakeholders. You may have heard the words key stakeholder. Now, the question is, we've been talking about stakeholders, but did we define who a stakeholder is? Can somebody define me who a stakeholder is? Anybody?
I think the stakeholders are.
And I want you guys to.
Yeah.
Get one what?
Yeah. Someone who directly or indirectly involved or is affected by the project.
Awesome. Good textual definition.
Yeah, it can be end user, or it can be investor, or it can be a developer.
Yes, exactly. Stakeholder, this is a contextual definition and an approved definition of who a stakeholder is by Rational Unified Process Methodology, as well as UML standards, as well as IIBA definition. IIBA is International Institute of Business Analysts, and I'm going to talk about that right at the end of this session when we close it, because I want to structure and lay out how this course is going to be, helping you, and how we have really divided everything in such a way that this not only helps you to understand what a BA role is all about, but also help you clear the certification exam and be a CBAP, Certified Business Analyst Professional. So I will explain you how that goes as well. So that's this definition here. Stakeholder is someone or something that interacts with the system and may be positively or negatively impacted by outcome of the system, right? So it's not always positive. Some stakeholders may suffer or may have a negative impact with the outcome of the system. So that's when you also come to know about a particular stakeholder that you have really not identified, that said, hey guys, I am actually an upstream to your system that you're building, right? An upstream is a downstream and upstream. These are the terms that I've been using just now. So you're building a system, so you may have gathered all the downstream stuff that will be part of your system, that kind of becomes an input to your system that you're building. But an upstream now is something that your system will disseminate or interface with, right? So you may have totally forgotten about that guy, and he may have some inputs for you as to how you need to develop this system so that it integrates well with the other upstream systems or other systems, right? So then in that case, that guy is going to be negatively impacted, and he or she will not be happy about it. You get it? That's why you need to identify your stakeholders early on through something called as RACI matrix, and we'll talk about it. All I'm going to say is what this means and stop it right there. So you need to identify each stakeholder who is responsible, who is accountable, who is supported or supportive, who is consulted, and who is informed. So these are the types of stakeholders in your RACI matrix. We'll talk about that detailedly in the next class. Okay, so we'll stop with that here and move on to types of requirements. We talked a little bit about this. Now I want to give a little more spiel here. So we talked about functional and non-functional requirements, right? In functional requirements, what we would have is something called, primarily the processes, right? The business processes, or data requirements, infrastructure requirements. All these are different types of requirements. They could be called as functional. And non-functional are something that are more of the stuff that we talked about, how part within the system, which could be usability, performance, supportability, all of that, which may not directly come from your stakeholders. You as a business analyst needs to know that as part of your enterprise analysis team or working with your architecture team. You would understand all those system requirements in terms of performance. Performance may come from stakeholders or from the subject matter experts, but whereas other stuff like could be supportability, could be scalability, something, all these abilities primarily, that could be something that you would actually discover as part of your enterprise analysis when you work with your architects, right? So we'll talk about that, all of that. So these are the different types of requirements. With that, we actually conclude this session, which I wanted to cover today, Introduction to IT Business Analysis. Any questions before we go ahead and start other, not topic, but I would like to cover what exactly you're going to get out of this particular course. Before I do that, any questions from a conclusion standpoint here? Okay, good. So any others, Mrinal or Samyukta?
No, it's good so far.
Okay, good. All right. So with that, I conclude this, but I would want to actually show you certain things here so that you guys would understand. So now you will be getting all of this. I'll walk through each one of it and try to make it as interactive as possible in each of my sessions. I don't want it to be really boring, dumb sessions. It would be more of role plays. Today was a little more dry because it's initial introduction, but I wanted to make it more interactive, participative. We'll be doing role plays. You guys will be functioning, one as a subject matter expert, one person as a VA, and the other person as maybe a project manager. We need at least 4 or 5 people, and we are expecting more guys to join maybe tomorrow or the next forthcoming sessions. Some of them had last-minute engagements, and we just got hold of them today, so they couldn't join, but they will in the next sessions, hopefully. So this one here, we are going to cover each one of this. Scope. Why does the BA need to know it? That's very important. Scope usually is done by PMs, but we'll talk about that. Enterprise analysis, which we kind of started off and left it. We'll talk about that. Architectural stuff. What is OO? This I'll go in depth. This is very important for a business analyst. So I'll go through each one of this, with examples, with real world examples and case studies. And these are all the diagrams that you would develop in a modeling tool called as rational rows, activity diagrams. But not every company does all of this. The highest ones would be activity diagrams. It just tells you in your structured world, right? You guys may have heard something called entity relationship diagrams or data flow diagrams. That's all old school, which is nothing but static or structural model. In your use case or your dynamic model, which is more of OOAD and RUP, this is nothing but really a process flow, activity diagrams. And then they may have swim lanes dividing each functional area. Swim lanes are nothing but identifying the functional areas and dividing that. So this is very important. Use case diagrams, we'll talk about that. Sequence diagrams may not be that much, but people use class diagrams because that's very important. These are in your traditional world nothing but your entities, which is nothing but really an entity relationship diagram kind of a thing. Deployment diagrams, some organizations use it, some don't. Again, depends on the client. This is very important. We'll go through this extensively about all of this. And techniques. I have an excellent module or like a study material for this, which I developed at Keen or NTT Data when I was working for them. I'll give you all of that. And business process modeling, there's a tool called as Visual Paradigm. Unlike your Visio, which captures a static one, Visual Paradigm captures things on the go. Like it's more of like a video flow that captures the live action of what a process flow is and when each particular segment comes into the place. So it's a very awesome tool. I used it at Keen or NTT like 10 years back. I'm sure things definitely have changed much and advanced more. They've got major versions now, like more modified and classy versions, which I saw like just a few days back before I was preparing for this class. So we'll have those kind of tools help you with this. Use cases, we'll talk about that. Use case is nothing but a chunk of functionality, as we said, all of that. This is good. That's what, and then a role of a BA. So a BA from the start to the get-go to the finish, they would be ending somewhere, Okay, so that's one. And then we will also give you all this templates that you would take with you. You can use them. We don't expect you to come up with the templates unless it's completely a new organization. They would have their own standards and templates, so this wouldn't mean much, but still good to have. Also, the other stuff that you would also get is the BOK, B-O-K, which is nothing but business analysis body of knowledge. And we conducted, you may see something here. This was the stuff that I kind of did a long time back for the CBAP certification in terms of how we should divide and conquer this for the certification program. So we would also help you with that. And the business analysis body of knowledge is very dry, but that's something for you once this class is kind of halfway through or some handmade. I will share that with you, which is it's kind of like maybe $100, around $100, I would say, the book, but you don't need to buy that. I'll get you that business analysis body of knowledge. It may not be the latest, but it still will serve the purpose for your certification, and that will help you if you attend the sessions all through and then follow through the BABOK, which is again from the IIBA. And I was also one of the members within the IIBA that time. Right now I'm more into PMI world. I volunteer there, but the business, the BABOK is kind of set standard by International Institute of Business Analysts. In the Boston chapter, we came up with this study material, all of it, for getting the certification. And there was a success rate of 98%. The way and the layout we scoped it, 98% success rate in passing the CBAP certification, and that's mostly widely accepted certification across the board for business analysts. So this is what you would get, and I have a ton of material, live stuff, and everything, and also on stuff. It's my profession. I would all kind of do a lot of hand-holding, getting you prepped up for the interview, as well as getting a good job. So in terms of proxy, I don't encourage that because I want you guys, I personally feel let down if I do the proxy stuff, because that means I haven't done a good job, is how I feel it. Rather, I would like to make you guys, be prepared for that interviews, because you are the one who's battling, every single day, doing the work on the job, right? So, but we'll get you prepped up and ensure that you'll be successful, not just in the interview, but also on the job. Any questions? So every day it's going to be an hour-and-a-half session. We may not have a session tomorrow, but I would like to continue the session maybe day after. Raidu will plan that depending on other folks. He's actually spoken to some. They said that they'll join tomorrow, so I need to kind of touch base with them one-on-one basis for tomorrow, and then day after we'll resume things back again. Or maybe, what is today? Today's Wednesday, right? So it would be a Friday session, or maybe we can touch base back again on Monday, if that is the case. We'll plan it out. He'll coordinate. So any questions, Mrinal or Hussein or Sam? Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right. I'll take that as a no. I got a reply back from Sam. No. So thank you very much for your time, and I hope this was really good, very informative, hopefully. I would like you guys to give me a feedback via email, or if you would like to give your feedback right now with my pace or with my delivery, I would welcome that, and I would try to accommodate all your concerns, questions, comments. Okay, all right. Hussein has already left. Okay, thank you guys. Bye. Bye guys. Have a good one.